Hello and welcome to Tete à Tete. Our guest this week is Brian Atwood. He was the head of the U.S. Agency for International Development, known as USAID. Under Bill Clinton, he is now a senior fellow at Brown University, and he joins us from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Mr. Atwood, for your time.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Mark.
President Trump has decided that USAID would essentially disappear. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced that 83% of its programs would be eliminated. And we know that its 10,000 strong staff should be reduced to a mere 15 employees. How would you describe this?
Well, I think it's a disaster not only for the United States and its interest in conveying soft power around the world and competing with the Chinese, for example, but also because of the various disasters that it created in developing countries. The United States has always been a leader in development assistance. I was the chair of the Development Assistance Committee. We've always had a capacity to surge when we've had an international or global crisis. The pandemic was the last one, and the official development assistance account went up to, I believe it was $239 or so billion. And that brought in a lot of foreign investment as well. But I think the developing countries right now are facing a sort of double whammy. Not only is ODA being reduced, not only by the United States, but by European countries, but also there's this trade war going on. And many of these countries have been able to sort of graduate to find exports that could help them sustain their economy. So they're facing real serious problems. I mean, USAID, for example, 25% or so of its budget basically was for global health, but that constituted 75% of all of the work being done on HIV/AIDS, on tuberculosis, on malaria, on the Marburg disease and Ebola. It's just a disaster. It's a slow-running disaster. I think it's going to become very, very serious in a few years.
Right. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, promised initially that, quote-unquote, essential life-saving programs would be among those preserved. However, it doesn't seem to be true. I mean, the World Food Program, for example, said the termination of many of programs could amount to a death sentence for millions of people facing extreme hunger and starvation. Do you agree that the U.S. is actually sentencing to death millions of people across the globe by essentially taking out USAID?
Yes, very sadly, I do agree with that. The World Food Program has been primarily supported by U.S. farmers and agriculture over the years. Those farmers, by the way, are also going to suffer, which is going to be eventually a political problem for President Trump. But also, the United States has dropped out of the World Health Organization, and some 40% of the budget of the World Health Organization came from USAID and the U.S. So it's really all of the transnational issues that we face, whether it's food security issues, as you mentioned, or infectious disease, or even migration. I mean, no one knows for sure how many people stayed home because they had a safe job and had an education and could bring their family up. We don't know what the impact of that is, but the fact of the matter is many people are going to suffer, and there'll be a lot more migration. This is kind of one of the ironies since Trump was elected on the basis of the immigration aspect.
But speaking of that, it also seems that the remaining recipients of USAID are being asked to answer some questionnaires, and in it, they're being asked to say if they're acting in favor of controlling immigration or scooping rare earth around the world. I mean, this is becoming a political conditions for granting aid.
I mean, this is the attitude of the very transactional Trump administration, basically, that everything we do has to have some sort of return for the American taxpayer. not looking into the distant future where we can say that peace and prosperity is the return that we've always had, and the world has benefited greatly from the investments that have been made. Now it's everything is transactional. Everything is you have to tell us how much you can pay us back for what we do for you. It's a very, very narrow-minded view of the world.
Right. This also means dismantling some programs that were set up through USAID to control immigration at the southern border, actually. We know this is such an important goal for Donald Trump, and USAID was actually helping in this regard, maybe not as efficiently as Trump would like it to be, but this is also going to disappear and could have the opposite effect on the migrations towards the border.
This is interesting because Trump eliminated the programs for Central America during his first term. Biden put them back in place, and in the last year before Biden left office, we were spending something like $450 million in the Central American countries and created something like 90,000 jobs as a result and a lot of foreign investment. I mean, we don't know exactly what impact that had on the surge of refugees coming across the border, but it certainly had some impact. And that basically we've now eliminated that arrow from the policy quiver.
Right.
It's self-defeating.
Right. You arrived at the helm of USAID in 1993. This was essentially the end of the Cold War, and I assume there was, if not the same questioning, typical questions at the time was, why should we continue spending? The communists are gone. Was there such a conversation at the time when you arrived at USAID?
Yeah, we were under great pressure. They wanted to eliminate our budget. They wanted to merge USAID into the State Department, as they have now done. They wanted to cut our budget because of what they called a peace dividend. We no longer have to fight the Soviet Union. And so why do we need foreign aid? I mean, this is the view of the conservatives. We pointed out, obviously, that there are other problems like terrorism, like immigration, climate change, for example. And we managed to get a bipartisan group to support foreign aid, and it has continued up until the Trump administration. Even during the first Trump administration, while he wanted to cut the budget, the Republicans didn't want it to happen. And I suspect there are still Republicans today who understand the importance of foreign aid, but they don't dare raise these questions because Trump has intimidated them. It's just a really sad situation.
Right. In addition, I mean, USAID is supposed, as you just said, to be folded into the State Department. And there are also reports that the budget of the State Department would be essentially cut by half. So it means it's not only the development programs, foreign aid, but actually the U.S.'s foreign presence in foreign countries that is now being questioned by those cuts.
Not only will be cutting consulates, we'll be cutting the number of people that are representing the United States overseas, but we're also cutting out the Voice of America and Radio Free Europe. These are radio stations that were depended upon by people living in authoritarian countries. There seems to be such a pro-authoritarian view of this administration. They don't want to insult the dictators. And it's just a really sad situation. It's mind-boggling, frankly. It's a worldview that I'm not familiar with. And it seems to me very much like the worldview of Viktor Orban of Hungary, or maybe even Vladimir Putin. I don't want to exaggerate, but I mean, it's a serious situation. I've never seen anything quite like it, and I'm hoping that there will be a reaction. We need a few moderate, sensible Republicans to resist this.
Right. As a last question, you alluded to the fact that this coincides with Europe essentially also cutting its foreign aid budget. Are you thinking that China or other countries will step in, or there will actually be a huge funding gap, and as a result, probably more people dying because they're not being helped or because they become sick?
I think there's no question that China would like to move in, but their programs are really more of the infrastructure type, the Belt and Road Initiative. They really cannot fill the gap in global health, for example, education, the environment. They're just not very good at those kinds of things. So I think there will be a very, very serious gap. I think the most serious one that will be a smoldering disaster as it comes along would be global health. We can't tolerate. We've got to deal with these infectious diseases on the ground, and we've got to help these countries develop the surveillance systems necessary to mitigate the effects of infectious disease. These viruses are just permeating, and it's going to be a very serious problem.
Brian Atwood, thank you very much for being our guest here on France 24, and thank you very much for watching this show.